Mr. Dane Clark, the man, the myth, the legend, the man who used to be pathologically shy and now he's just crushing it in every way. So, good morning, brother. How you doing?
Oh, good to hear from you, brother. Appreciate you.
Topic. So it's like going one more. Like it's this idea of what if when you get like up against the wall, you feel like you want to quit. Like, what if I just go one more day? Or maybe it's I need one more phone call, and that one phone call is the thing that tips the scale, that tipping point. So the power of one more is what the topic is today, but you can really take that wherever it is you feel we need to go.
Anyway, so on this topic, I think that I've had so many experiences in this space, if you will, that I ended up almost having to, like, being forced to deem the saying that literally your big goal, like whatever your big goal is typically one conversation, one relationship, one person away from achieving that goal. And man, could tell story after story after story of these interesting situations where all of a sudden I'm talking to somebody and I'm like, this is the person that's going to help me achieve my big goal. Like this is the person that was missing from the story until right now. And it's cool because you guys hear me say this all the time, that it didn't matter if that person was new to my life, as in I never knew that person and I literally met that person in the very act of trying to achieve a goal, or it was somebody new. And it didn't matter. Like there's people that I've known for years and years and years, and I had that one conversation and all of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh, like this person's going to help me achieve my big goal. And I had no idea. Like I said, I had some of these people I had known for 10 years before I even joined Renatus, sometimes more. And all of a sudden I'm talking to them and I'm like, man, 10 years ago when you and I met, before I even knew about Renatus, I had no idea that you were going to be somebody that helped me achieve one of my own big goals. Or like I say, vice versa, like that moment that I'm at one of these, the moment that I'm at some networking event and I meet somebody and that person just leans over and is like, I want to do business with you. And all of a sudden we're doing business together because it was a two-way street. At the end of the day, I was the answer to that person where, oh my gosh, like I've been wanting to do this for years. Where have you been for 10 years? And all of a sudden we're doing business together. And so, again, I had to deem that saying that my big goal is one person, one conversation away from being achieved. And essentially I would just not stop until I found that one person, because it's like a sifting game. There was so many people, and this is why, and I'm going to kind of tangent this a little bit, but this is why when I would say that I would meet with somebody, I would let somebody see the intro, whether it was online or in person, didn't matter. They would see an intro. I would do a one-on-one. And if we couldn't see a light at the end of the tunnel by that time, I don't want to say I would drop them, but in my mind, I would be like, this isn't that person. This isn't that person that I've been waiting for. This isn't that person that's been waiting for me, because they didn't see it within, let's say 2 hours of intro, 1 hour of one-on-one. So within 3 hours of time spent, 3 hours is a long time. Can you imagine spending 3 hours from right now until 3 hours later of just learning about Renatus in an intro, in a one-on-one, whatever? Like 3 hours is a decent amount of time. And if they can't see, like, I want to do business here, I want to this fits within my goal structure of what I want. Or, if they can't say that after 3 hours of their time, then they're not that person. And that I've been waiting for, or they obviously haven't been waiting for me. And so again, I wouldn't drop them, but I would start telling myself like, all right, I'm just going to put these people on the back burner. If they keep on coming to events and eventually buy, and that's fine, basically play the long game with those people. But they're not the person that I'm looking for. That is the next person that's going to help me achieve my big goal. And it was interesting because all of a sudden I was like, it was so valuable to me to find that person that was like, oh my gosh, where have you been for the last 10 years? And bam, just start selling combos left and right, or closing that real estate deal, raising that money to the point where, raising millions of dollars every month even. And it just changed my life to start thinking that way. I'm one person away from achieving my next big goal. And if I spend 3 hours with somebody, then they're not that person. Sure, they might play the long game and they might buy eventually, but I'm already off to the next person that I've been waiting for and who has been waiting for me. And so, balloons. And so I think that mindset, again, it changed the way I showed up to a conversation. It changed the way I showed up to networking events. It changed the way that I did my one-on-ones. Because all of a sudden I was the prize. And all I was doing is sifting. Are you the person I've been waiting for? Yes or no? And after an introduction, an introductory, I'd honestly just send them to Mitch. And so after seeing Mitch for a couple hours, and then one-on-one with me, and they weren't like, this, I like this. They're not that, what would you call that? That perfect sale or whatever you want to deem that as. They weren't looking for me, and I wasn't looking for them. This is like blindsided, and they're going to have to think about it and make decisions slowly because they don't know. They don't know what they want. It's the ones that all of a sudden you meet them and they're like, they know what they want. And this is it. And so anyway, and some of you guys heard that story of like, this works in every situation. This works in business. This works in spirituality. This works in fun, vacation, recreation, occupation. Like this mentality, if you will, works in all of those situations. Some of you guys, I don't want to necessarily bore you guys with the story, but that crazy story of having all of a sudden 4 children under, let's see, 4 children under the age of 5. Oh no, 6. So 4 under 6. My wife's like, hey, we love off-roading. And so the Jeep ain't gonna cut it because there's only 5 seats in a Jeep. We need 6. I started thinking like, all right, I'm one person away from figuring out how I'm going to get a crazy off-road machine that we can jump. Like, I want something insane. And I was just talking to some guy and was in really good rapport with that person, shared with him one of my goals. And he's like, oh my gosh. I know the guy that literally works for the Ford Performance, works for Ford Performance. And his job is to go crash Broncos in the desert and figure out what broke and then re-engineer. He's got this state-of-the-art machine shop and re-engineer those parts so that next time they don't break. He lives like 15 minutes from your house, or he's got his machine shop is 15 minutes from your house. And I was just like, are you gonna be this again? I knew this was going to happen. but I was like, holy crap, this works. And so all of a sudden I'm talking to this guy and we're designing a third row seat for a Bronco Raptor that instead of having to go crazy custom and do a third row to that Jeep, we did a third row for a Bronco Raptor. And so now I've got the minivan that you can jump and go crazy off-roading. And I could fit my entire family of 6. And now let's see, our ages, this year, the ages will be 2, 4, 6, 8 years old. And we can go down to Moab or whatever and all kinds of off-roading. Because there was one person that I was waiting for or they were waiting for me. And I had one conversation, and that conversation led to the person who actually helped me do or achieve the goal. And so you're always one person away from achieving your big goal. And you're just looking for him. And man, I talked to a bunch of people about that. Like, oh yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to get a 7-seater or a 6-seater. I better not say 7. I'm going to curse myself. We're going to have one more. 6-seater off-road machine and talked to a bunch of people about it and never went anywhere. But I knew I was looking for that person. And all of a sudden, bam, talked to that person. And within days, it felt like we had the machine and a customized third row. And I mean, and we went nuts. Like this thing has like racing seat belts, 5-point harnesses in the rear. So the kids are, arguably the kids in the rear seat are safer than everyone else because they got the 5-point harness. And oh, it's awesome. We haven't jumped it quite yet, but we will. But awesome to take the whole family. And so again, I say this works for anything. This works for your business. This works for spirituality. This works for personal goals. This works for family goals. This works for recreation, anything. You're one person away from achieving any big goal that you have. And back to all wealth is built through conversation. Not all wealth is money. Again, wealth can be spiritual. Wealth can be relationships. Wealth can be, you name it. So one person away. Anyway, I think you guys are picking up what I'm putting down here. But yeah, one person away, one conversation away. And if you talk to someone for, let's say let's use the example, 3 hours, and they still don't recognize yeah, you're the person I've been waiting for. No, find that person, find the next person. Sure, put them on the back burner. And it's cool because now every future conversation you have, you are the prize. Because in your mindset, you're yeah, you're not that person. I'll continue to work with you. I'll continue to invite you to events. I'm not saying you just stop calling them. But they're not that person. If they spend 3 hours, they're not that person.
So Dane, I have a quick question for you. So
go ahead, brother.
If you've been spending this time with these people, but maybe your drive is not quite as connected as theirs, have you found it valuable to say, hey, let's do another, 3-way call or another, third person validation type of sizzle call where you have someone that connects a little bit deeper with them on that call as well, and you provide that third party validation? Has that been something that you've ever done before, been helpful?
I would do that with events. I'd be like, hey, I got somebody I want you to meet. So come on Wednesday night to the house tour. Come on Thursday night to the big meeting. Come on Monday night to the study group, whatever. And I knew that somebody was going to be there that they could connect with. That's not just me. And also they could see that, hey, this is a lot bigger than just me. And so I didn't usually do 3-way calls. It was mostly, hey, come to this event. I got somebody I want you to meet. And I would bring them down and introduce them there because they were already there. They're already going to be there. And then I would play mismatch because it's like, hey, come shake this person's hand and have a conversation with them and make sure that you don't leave without getting their contact information. And so but again, I do 3-way calls all the time too. So for other people. But
so the reason I bring that up is because one of the things I've found effective is when I'm closing a combo, sometimes you want to not be the one that's, I don't even know the best way to say it. If I tell them I'm wrong, but if somebody else tells them or they tell me, then they're right, if that makes sense.
yeah.
A lot of times it's having that tag team. It reminds me like being a missionary. Sorry for being religious for a second, but being a missionary, when you have a mouth of multiple witnesses, then what you say actually lands and has more impact. But if it's just you and you're not able to connect it to another person, like an event is huge, but sometimes events online, they don't get that that third-party validation the same. I mean, you can share digital assets. That's one way that they can do that, but it's different if you have a phone call. So I mean, I've done that with Jared, with Wanda, with Michael, multiple people. And if you keep it to like 8 or 10 minutes, it's not that big of a deal most of the time. If you do it like an hour and a half, then that can be like a big challenge to have somebody else commit that type of time. But if you can keep them short, a lot of times that will, if you're building remotely, that can be very helpful.
Yeah. If you're building remotely, then definitely you're going to need the three-way call. If you're building locally where people are rubbing shoulders and shaking hands with each other, then yeah. And that's how I built my business. I shook every person's hand that I ever sold a combo to, like almost every single time. There was a few outliers. I think I have one student in like Maine, and sure, I never shook his hand. But most of the time I was doing local. And so, but yeah, if you're not doing local, then here's how I do it. If you're doing out of state stuff, I would go, I'd have a very designated group of people where I would say like, hey, can we swap tit for tat? Can we swap three-way calls? You can use me for three-way calls. I can, if you'll let me use you for three-way calls, and vice versa. And so, and then I would say, okay. And especially if that person had one of those, Michael Huggins did that. I don't know, somebody remind me of the name, where he interviewed like somebody every single week and did multiple stories, and they did like 100.
They did Zoom ups. Those Zoom ups are all still accessible. They're on the Elevate Facebook or not the Elevate YouTube channel. So you guys can still use those and share them very easily. Yeah.
And so what I would do is if the person that I'm swapping three-way calls with, if they don't have a Zoom up, then we would make one. And I would tell my prospect, hey, watch this Zoom up, and then I'm going to schedule a call with that person. So that way they come in already knowing like, man, like let's say it's Pat and Pat has a Zoom up, and if she doesn't have one, then we make one. And then I would say like, all right, I'm going to connect you with somebody that I think you really need to talk to. Watch this Zoom up of Pat and her quick story. Because then their story their conversation with Pat can be from, again, Pat's the prize. And they would already see that because Pat's, they're going to see that Pat did this Zoom up and she's talking about her deals. She's talking about her story. And so they've already seen like, man, she's done something. Like in that three-way call, they don't have to be like, all right, so what have you done? They already see like, oh my gosh, like Pat's amazing. And their interaction with Pat is probably going to be more geared towards them because they're like, Pat's a figure of authority. And I already saw that in the Zoom up call. And so they can focus on, again, more important, deeper items of conversation so that, again, more value for everybody. Doesn't take as much time of Pat's, and Pat comes in as the prize because they already know a little bit about her reputation. That's a way that you can artificially have Pat's reputation precede her when you're doing a three-way call with her, to give your prospect that third-party validation.
Dan, can I add one more thing? This was something that I thought was helpful, especially if you're building remotely. Another way you can add third-party validation and let people know, hey, it's not just me, is you can actually go to someone's Facebook profile. This is why it's so important for your last 5 posts to be professional. Always think about that. What are my last 5 posts?
Yeah.
You don't want them all the same thing, and you want them to actually resonate with who you are and who you're trying to attract. But when you use like Steve Nomura, I love the way that he does his posts. He'll tell a little story about how he found the house, and he'll have a picture of like 217 or 220 with like in front of the house with a little name card. And I was like, that's awesome. So simple. And you can go and screenshot that and then share it with somebody. Those are very easy ways to build third-party validation without you having to say anything. That's just, hey, this was one of my friends. This is Steve. He couldn't even speak English before he came down. And because of this awesome opportunity and community, he's got the support that he learned English and how to invest. And now he's done over 200 properties. Amazing. He's like the golden child. I love using his story because I like to talk to Chinese people and Japanese people, like anyone that I can that is Asian. Like, I'm like, he's the man. So you got to get to know him. So that's one way you can do it. And the other one was, I know I hound this on this call, but I think corporate has put together those Renatus reviews for a reason. If we have someone that you think will connect, use that little 2 or 3 minute review. It's very compact and edify through the digital medium. Like if you're just doing a phone call, you have them watch that little thing. Like, well, I've done that with Wanda multiple times. She has one. I've done it with Michael. I'll send them a little 2 minute video, and then they have an idea of, oh, I need to listen to this person. They actually have credibility, because when you edify and promote their credibility, people listen with more intent. So that was my 2 cents.
100%. And like even and this might be dangerous for me to say, but I'm going to go out there. I'm going to do it. Even let's say somebody wanted to use like myself for some third party credibility or validation. I did a Zoom up. I've even got Renatus reviews. And so let's say that somebody showed either my Zoom ups or my Renatus reviews and said, hey, come on Wealth Wednesday and talk to Dane. I mean, obviously, maybe don't invite them from 8 to 9, but invite them at 9 and say, come at 9 o'clock when we're doing this dream call. And they've already seen my Zoom up. So again, reputation precedes itself. And before, in fact, I think Brigham did this once where he's like, hey, I think he was a brand new student at that point. But he's like, hey,
the one thing
I've got
with
a
that,
guy.
guys, just so that we can make sure that calls are consistent, is make sure that they know the price. So there's no shot, there's no sticker shock. Come to an event. This is not a first exposure type of thing. Typically, this is someone that's either in funding or they already know, like, and trust us. They're like, hey, I'm just figuring out what's next steps. Like that's one thing, because this is not a good first exposure. I mean, Dane's amazing. I do it 100% agree. Dane's amazing. You need to connect him, but let them know what it is that we do first, so that they're not like blindsided and we say something that like cools them off, if that makes sense. We want to make sure that you follow the process, invite them to the event, and then after that, if you're like, hey, this is going to add extra value to them, let them get over that fence. Absolutely. They're welcome to come to these calls and finish. I just want to give that so you guys don't lose people on a first exposure. So that's my clarification. Yeah,
100% agree. If they've seen the price, if they've got an order in even, and they're just, you want to keep them just like really, really excited. Yeah. Send them at 9 o'clock on a Wednesday morning to our call. Get with me beforehand, which Brigham did. So, hey, I've got a guy that I would love to have you give him some one-on-one mentoring, essentially. Put him in the hot seat on a dream call Wednesday morning. And had that guy already bought that you brought? Yeah,
so Wayne had already bought his essentials, and he was just waiting for funding for the epics. So that's why I was like, that's a perfect opportunity.
And guys, he got his epics?
Think of it this way. Any person that's an essentials holder is still a customer until they've bought everything. Until they're all in, they are still a customer. So we want to make sure that we give them the value every single time we're in front of them, because we want to make sure we're solving problems, giving them every reason to say, man, these people are who they say they are. They do what they say they do, and they're investing in real estate, and it's not hypothetical, it's real. We want to make sure that they feel loved and comfortable, willing to come off mute. Like, that's why we want to protect the way that these calls are set up, because this is such a valuable asset that we have. So anyway, it's really important that we let people that have already heard everything. It's not that they're not welcome. It's just, I don't want to lose your your guest, if they come down and this is their first exposure and we haven't built enough value in their head to solve the problems, they might just leave the call and the sale's over, right? So just be conscientious of that. There might be a situation where you're like, hey, this person needs to know Dane first, maybe, but I would say 98% of the time, go through the introduction or or before you ever come down.
I'd say 100% of the time. Like if they have not seen the intro, then I don't think it'd be a good thing to have them jump on. And so, but yeah, just to open myself up there for help in that, because it is tough for me to do 3-way calls nowadays, just crazy busy. And so, but this is how I guess I can kind of do that if people want to use myself as third-party credibility.
I had another idea that might be helpful that I think you could expound on really well. When you're asking questions, sometimes it's the questions we don't ask that make it so the sale doesn't go through. So what is that one extra question or the few questions that you've been able to go deeper with someone so that you can connect with them a little more, so they can actually know, like, and trust you a little bit deeper?
Yeah. One of my favorites was to, I always called it forward pacing. For lack of a better term, I always called it forward pacing. And so I would ask them and say, like, hey, imagine right now, that you and I are sitting down where we are sitting, but 1 year in the future, right? So here we are, May 15th, it's 2024 today. So here we are, May 15th of 2025, next year. So imagine that you and I are having this conversation, and what is the one thing that if you were sitting here telling me, like, Dane, I did this, what is the one thing that would make all of this worth it? Make it all worth it that you started, make it all worth it that you busted your butt for the last year, again, because I'm thinking future pace. So in the future, so you're like, what is the one thing that you're like, Dane, I am so glad that this happened, that would make this all worth it, that you started? What is it? And man, I would get stuff. I'd get all kinds of stuff, but most of the time it was like, oh, that I did a deal. It would make it all worth it. Like, oh, that I like I had some people say that I was able to quit my second job because I'm working 2 jobs right now. And so if a 1 year's time, I could tell you, like, Dane, I quit my second job, this would be all worth it. Or I'm trying to think of I'm trying to recall things that people actually said to me. Let's see. Job, did a deal. That I paid off all my credit cards. That basically Renata's paid for itself. That I made my 20 some odd thousand back. I had people say stuff like that. I had people say, some people were like crazy ambitious, like, oh, that I've got 5 properties. A year later, and whatever that was, I loved asking that question in that manner. That's like, hey, future pace, 1 year from now, what's the one thing that you're telling me that this is why I'm glad I did this? What is that thing? And I would write it down. In fact, if I pulled up my iPad's in the back over there. If I pulled out my iPad and I scrolled through, even people that never bought, I still have record of all of the things that people tell me. And it was actually really fun, because then a year's time would pass, and the people who bought, I would pull it up and I'd be like, remember this? You told me this 1 year ago, that this is what would make it all worth it, that you joined Renata's. And then depending on what happened, maybe it would change. Maybe it'd be like, oh, you know what? That's what I thought I wanted, but then I watched all the classes and I went to all the meetings and all the things I learned, I realized that this is what I want and this is what we did, and man, this was worth it. Sometimes it would change. Sometimes they'd be like, man, I thought that was a big goal. You guys destroyed that goal, and I was able to do this instead of that goal. Or some people are like, you know what? I'm still working on it, but as soon as I get that, this is still going to be worth it. And people like, I mean, I was in that camp. 1 year later, 1 year into Renata, so I joined November of 2015. So November of 2016, I probably wouldn't know. In fact, I can guarantee I would not have told you that, yeah, I got everything I wanted through Renatus. 1 year in, no. I was a slow bloomer. What do they call that? Yeah. A late bloomer, whatever. It took me longer than I anticipated to achieve the goals that I had. But I will tell you that even though I underestimated what I hoped I could do in 1 year, I have not even been in Renatus for, or here, let's even say 5 years. So I overestimated and under delivered, if you will, in my first year personally. But holy smokes, I outdid my wildest dreams of what I thought was even possible. Like literally, I broke reality in my own world of what was possible in 5 years. And again, I have not even been in 10 years. And still, I broke more reality of what I thought would even be like literally the best thing that I thought would ever happen to me in my lifetime. I was breaking those best possible scenarios within 5 years. And here we are, let's see, approaching 9 years at the end of this year. This November will mark 9 years from the day that I bought Renatus. And same thing, like blowing my brains, had no idea any of this was even humanly possible. 9 years in, almost 9 years in. Let's call it 8.5 years. And so even if 1 year later you have students that are like, no, I didn't get that, or I didn't. But you can ask them again, like, well, if you still got this goal, would it all be worth it then? And the answer is always, almost always, still yes. If I get that goal this next year, then yeah, Renatus will still be. And that's the beautiful thing about lifetime membership is it doesn't matter when. It matters that they keep working to achieve that goal. And man, I got a bunch of stories like that too, where people were like myself, late bloomers, but then year 2, 3, 4, 5 blew their brains for what was possible and outdid every goal fathomable by them at that time in their lives. I mean, just awesome. Awesome. So I love that question. You and I are talking 1 year from today, May 15th, next year, 2025. What is the one thing that if you're telling me that, Dane, I got it, would make it all worth it that you started on this journey? What is that? What is that thing that made it all worth it? And notice that I'm talking in past tense. What is the one thing that made it all worth it? Not what is the one thing that would make it all worth it? What is the thing that made it worth it because you started? Future tense. Or I guess at that time, past tense, because they're speaking as if in the future. Love that question. I would record all of their answers every single time, document it, that I could recall, that I could bring up 6 months in, 1 year in. I've got students that have been in for 5, 6, 7 years, and I could pull that up if I was recording them at that time, of course. But there was a time that I started and I never finished asking that question and recording it. And then I would use it throughout the sales process and go back to that and be like, hey, remember, I know this was like a week ago that you told me this, but remember when you told me that, hey, this is the thing. Let's get this for you. Let's get you funding. I've got somebody I want you to meet. Let's jump on a 3-way call. I've got somebody I want you to meet. Come to this house tour of this person that's flipping it, whatever. Because I want to help you get that thing. I want to be the person that shows up in your mind Like for example, my enroller, Mitch Nelson. Mitch, in fact, I just texted him like a week or two ago. I have this happen every now and again where I just overwhelmingly gratitude, like flooded, where I'm just like, dude, I'm like pinching myself. Thank you for being that guy that's like, Dane, you should get into real estate, even though I didn't know a dang thing about real estate. And I have to admit that the first time I told him, I was like, take a hike. I don't know a dang thing about real estate. Go do your real estate. I'm going to keep on doing my cushy desk job. And then a year later was like, hey, you still doing that real estate thing? Again, I was slow, but holy cow, am I glad that he reached out and said, you should get into real estate. I'm going to do it. You should too. Because here I am. Changed my life. And so yeah, gather that kind of information, because then you can recall it. You can bring it up in future conversations. It's awesome. Absolutely awesome. And so cool.
Just a form question. What is it that you do to track that? Do you just leave it in a note? Do you put it on your Google Drive?
Yeah.
Mark it in your Renata system. What do you do?
I use the app OneNote on my iPad, right? And I would save that all in OneNote in some, and it was fun because then I could send it to him too. Like, let's say I do a one-on-one and I've got it all written out in my OneNote of their goals, future paced, 3-phase plan, velocity banking, whatever. I could be like, yeah, I'm going to email you this when I'm done. So you have it. And they'd be like, oh, thanks. But then I also had it. So yeah, so I just did it OneNote, handwritten in my handwriting. Easy to share, easy to recall. Because I would just name the note their name really, really quickly.
So one thing you've shared in the past is how you do your follow-ups. Can I get like your 30,000 foot overview, what your format was? Because it sounded like it was future pace. You figure out what that is. And then you have multiple elements that you cover. You do your 3-phase plan like we do in the introduction. What else do you include? Just like the framework.
Yeah. So future pace. Here's what I want. Here's what would make it all worth it. I'm like, cool. Here's how we're going to get that 3-phase plan. You watch this class, you watch that class, you talk to this person, you talk to that person. You have very, very educated conversations as you go, or sorry, you have rudimentary conversations where you don't know what you don't know. And you're just talking to people because I told you to. And then you'll notice that over time, your conversations get more valuable and more valuable. I mean, man, I got so many stories on this where I had students where I was like, yeah, go talk to somebody. They're like, I don't know anything. I don't care. Go talk to somebody and say the words real estate. Prove to yourself that you're capable of doing this. Go say the words real estate to a human. And then they're like, and then like 3-4 months later, I forced them to do that every week. And they're like, dude, I just had this conversation about real estate and this guy wants to buy this house and he's moving and I think I can help him. And I even have those on recording where this guy was like a naysayer and then all of a sudden he's like having valuable conversation. Anyway, 3-phase plan. You're going to have conversations rudimentary. You're going to have conversations more and more and more valuable. You're going to watch all these classes, 3-phase plan. You're going to make offers. And this is how 1 year from now, you're going to be able to tell me that's why this is all worth it. Because I watched these classes, I had these conversations. All wealth is built through conversation, and you did the thing. And so 3-phase plan. And then I would finish it off with, all right, the only thing you need to decide is if you like this and this makes sense to you, and or this fits within your goal structure. The only thing you need to decide is if you like this. And if you do, we just got to figure out how we're getting you in, AKA how we're going to pay for it. And so then we would go in to pay for it. Whether it was like, hey, let's figure out velocity banking so you can pay for it. Let's figure out, you've got cash. Let's write a check. Right? And so I basically just pull up the Renata's funding options, right? It's in our back office. There's like a whole list of funding options. I would just start from the top. Hey, I've had some people pay cash, write a check. I've had some people do HELOCs. I've had some people get credit cards. I've had some people do 401k, borrowing from their 401k and pay. I just go down the list of what's in the back office. Cash, credit, HELOCs, 0% credit cards, 401k, debit card, whatever. HELOCs. I think I already said that. But I just go down the list and say, yeah, I've had people pay like this. I've had people pay like this. I've had people pay like this. And if there was any situation that I hadn't, so for example, the one I never did wasn't because it wasn't possible, but I never had somebody pull from a cash value life insurance policy to pay for their education. Although Michael Huggins has a story like that. And so I would be like, yeah, I've seen some people pay like this. What's the difference between I've had people pay like this? I've seen people, like, in their mind, it's still possible because I've seen people pay like this.
Yeah, hey,
Other
Dane.
people, students, not mine, but seen it happen. And so, yeah, go through the list and I'd be like, so which one's going to work for you? And
Hey,
then we
Dane.
would set that goal. Go ahead.
Yes, in case you're wondering, Jay Abramovitz actually paid used life insurance. So in case
There you go.
some sample.
So I've seen two people, Michael Huggins' grandma and Jay Abramovitz.
There you go.
I've seen two people pay with a life insurance policy, and all of a sudden their credibility is now mine. Or I should say I'm borrowing. Their credibility is now borrowed by me. And it rolls off the tongue like water off a duck's back that now I can say it. Yeah, I've seen people pay with a life insurance policy. Easy. So thank you. You just added to the credibility that I use in my own conversations by learning that. That's why I love doing calls like this, because it's like, man, I get these stories where I can recall pieces of this conversation in the next conversation that I have later today, tomorrow, next week, whatever. I don't care that you probably don't know what to say. You need to have a conversation a day with humans about real estate, about what you're learning. And I would promise them that by doing that kind of activity is going to drum up business ideas, opportunities, no matter how experienced you are. And all of a sudden, here's what happens. Because I tell that newbie, say, go have a conversation every day. And then he's like, oh, I was talking to this person, and they're like, hey, I want to get into real estate too. And all of a sudden I'm like, cool, book a call. Let's talk to that person too. And even though those people are like, no, I don't want to be an ICM, but here I am closing a second combo because all of a sudden the person that they talked to was like, hey, I want to do this too. Now they don't know this, but I do. That if I were to try and put a percentage on it, I would probably say 7 times out of 10, when someone talks to another human, they actually are best fitted to also purchase Renatus than they would be like where they might have a deal for you. They might have money for you to raise money from that person, right? Because you guys heard the 4 boxes. They want to do real estate. They want to be passive. They want to do real estate. They want to be active. They have deals that are thorns in their side, and you need to help them with their real estate deal because you're Renatus educated, or real estate, big no, don't like it, don't want to talk about it, get out of my face. So of the 4 boxes, I know that if I go tell a newbie, go have a conversation about real estate, just say the words real estate to other human beings. That's it. And see where the conversation goes. I personally know that 7 times out of 10, that person that they go talk to is going to be in box number 1. No, sorry, 2. Like real estate, want to be active. Oh, I've been thinking about getting into real estate too. And I'm like, cool, let's do a 3-way call. I hate to say trick, but I would get my brand new students sending me referrals. That were, even if they were like, yeah, I don't want to be an ICM, I'm fine with that. Go have conversations. You want to do a real estate deal? Go have a conversation. How else are you going to raise money? How else are you going to make an offer? You got to talk to humans. All wealth is built through conversation. Between you and me, 7 times out of 10, the person they go talk to also wants Renatus. They just don't know it yet. And I mean, this is how I got the award. Most 5 stars created from a team that said, I don't want to be an ICM. All wealth is built through conversation. Go have conversations. And then they would drum up more business for everybody. If you don't have money, you got to talk to humans. If you do have money, you got to talk to humans. So might as well start now. And so get him talking to people. And I would do the one a day thing. I would sit down and be like, all right, what could you do? Show me what you're made of. How many people you think you could talk to in a week? And I would tell him my minimum is one a day. How many people you think you could go talk to? And I would teach them the 4 boxes and say, here's the only outcomes that's going to happen. They're going to be want real estate passively involved, want real estate actively involved, don't want to talk about real estate because they have real estate and it's a piece of junk or a pain in their side, and now you're going to buy their house. Or some people are going to be like, no, get out of my face. I don't want to talk about real estate. So I tell them those are the only 4 options. It's funny. I tell my ICMs that. I tell my non-ICMs that, because it's both true. ICMs, those are the only 4 options. Non-ICMs, oh, you want to do real estate deals? Well, here's the only 4 options that you're going to run into. And sure, the people that are also actively involved, like maybe you look at them as competition, and so just be like, you know what, go talk to Dane. If they're like, yeah, I want to be you. I want to do the same thing you're doing. Yeah, you know what, go talk to Dane. Get out of my face. Because they're like, I don't want to be an ICM. I'd be like, yeah, I'll talk to them. And so I just say get him to start talking to people.
Thanks so much for being on today, guys. And Dane, man, I love being on calls with you. It's so much fun. You just freaking crush it every day. So,
well, I love you guys. I'm glad that I can help. Anything I can do for you, appreciate it.
So, appreciate you guys. Have a great rest of your day, and God bless.